This is Senator Angus King on Answering the Call, Veterans Voices, talking to veterans in Maine about their experience in the service and after the service. Joy, it's wonderful to be with you, to have a chance to talk today. And I want to talk about your experience as a sort of I won't say a pioneer, but an early female Navy person who joined in 1974. You came from a military family. Give me the background. What brought you to enlisting in the Navy back in '74?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Senator King, for inviting me to do this interview today. I'm very honored to be here. Um, Again, I did come from a very patriotic family. My dad served in World War II in the China, Burma, India theater in the Army, and he never
I
talked
got
about.
I got to stop you right there. Where was he stationed in China? Was he stationed in China?
No, he was in Burma.
Okay, because my father-in-law, Mary's father, was in Kunming, China, with
Uh,
Claire Chenault and the Flying Tiger. So
oh,
that's fascinating. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, and my dad, he passed away when he was 70, but he never talked about his service or anything, and but we were a very patriotic family. And that was really instilled in me early on. And I knew when I was in high school, early in high school, that I wanted to join the military. I just wasn't quite sure what branch, but I kept leaning towards the Navy because I loved the water, and we lived up near the water here in Maine. And so I know it was during the Vietnam era. It was kind of winding down there, and my parents were a little worried about me doing this because they always thought the opportunity is going to come up sometime where I might have to, go overseas. And but that didn't deter me from wanting to go in. So what I did was, there was a girl I went to high school with, and at that time the Navy had a program called the Buddy Program, where you could go in through boot camp together, and then once you're completed boot camp, then you go on your separate ways. So that's what
Well,
happened.
that seems like a good idea. So the deal was that you went in together. You'd have boot camp together, so you had somebody that you knew to sort of hang out with. And do they still do that? I like that idea.
Yeah, I don't know, and I actually don't think they do. But it made me think about, our military joining today. Maybe if they had a program like that, it might help, prevent a lot of things that happen, and you know, have that buddy with them. So I'll certainly look into that on my end as well. But that I thought it was a very great program, because my boot camp was in Orlando, Florida, and lasted for 8 weeks. And at that time, we weren't integrated with men, even though there was men in boot camp there at the same time. And we just had separate areas that we were in.
Did you have to go through the same? Was the program the same? Did you have to do push-ups and run and
Yeah, we
rope
had to do
course and
all
all
of
that?
that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know if I was quite prepared for all of that in the beginning, but I caught on very quickly. So,
And so now you mentioned that so the facilities were segregated by sex. You were separated, and at that point, that was before we had females in combat or on ships or
correct.
a lot different. Describe the situation then, and then what we have now or what we have when you left.
Yeah, I think for me, it was, I was hoping really to be more, I was ready to go. I wanted to go overseas or wherever they wanted to send me. I wanted to, serve my country and have, the experience to do all that. And even though I knew, there was potential there to be killed and all of that, but our country was definitely, I was worth it for me, and I wanted to do that. Um, I think for me, when I was in, especially early on, it was very challenging being a woman in a couple of different situations. I was the only female woman at that duty station, and that was quite a shock for me, coming from a little town in Belfast, Maine. Never been out of the state, and not really understanding life in the world as much as maybe I should have at that time. But it was scary as well, to do that. Um,
Did
I,
the Navy take any, I mean, did they help you out? Did they provide any additional support or acknowledgement of the difficulty of the situation?
no, not at all. And I think that's probably, one of the big things that's the biggest difference today is that, at least I hope it is that, those types of things are more talked about, with especially our women veterans and men as well. Because there's a lot of challenges out there, and women and men both still deal with a lot of trauma, military sexual trauma, um, all
Well,
of these.
we deal with it. I've been dealing with this issue on the Armed Services Committee ever since I got here almost 10 years ago. And
Mhm,
every year we were assured by the Pentagon that things are in hand and getting better, and the trend is in the right direction. But we keep having these problems. We made some major changes last year in the way
mhm.
the criminal justice system works in the military. So uh, everybody's focused on it, but you're in a kind of hothouse atmosphere. It's a
Yeah.
difficult situation. Uh,
You know,
your
you know,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I have one thing I wanted to share that just got brought to my attention the other day by a woman veteran that I know that was, dealt with military sexual trauma. She was recently invited to join a veterans organization in Maine. And the man that asked her to join, um, it started out, being legit, I guess, as a conversation. But then it kind of moved towards more, don't tell my wife that I asked you to join, and more of a sexual, kind of conversation. So it got me thinking about um, women that have served, are veterans, and women that are still serving. There's still a big disconnect here. And I think part of it is that maybe we could do more about is these veteran organizations, they want you to join them. They want women to join, but they don't know how to deal with us, I guess is a better way to put it. That so one suggestion somebody had was, why isn't there any type of training when men and women get out of the service about we're all equals. We all serve. We all raised our hand to serve. Why can't we be treated as equals when it comes to being a veteran? Somebody on
Well,
the committee.
that's something that has really bothered me is that I don't think that the handoff between active duty and the VA and being out is good enough. That
Absolutely, I agree.
there isn't enough. What I said the other day, I was at a hearing with some Army, the Secretary of the Army, as a matter of fact, who, by the way, is a woman, and I said, I think you guys ought to spend as much time, money, and effort on when people leave the military as you do recruiting, uh, because
Absolutely.
there's data that the largest number of suicides among veterans is in the first year or two after leaving active duty, and that tells
Mhm.
me that this is something we ought to be really paying some attention to, and it sounds like you've observed the same thing.
I have, and one of the thoughts I have about that, I've thought about this over the last couple of years, is when I was stationed at Pearl Harbor, we used to have a program called like a welcome aboard program, where we would assign an active duty sailor to a new active duty sailor that was coming to our new duty, to their new duty station, kind of like a buddy program. And they kind of stayed with them throughout their tour there. And it really helped them a lot. So one thought I had was, why not when men and women are getting out of the service, why can't we have a buddy program for them coming back? Like I would raise my hand and say, yeah, if we got a young sailor or somebody or a veteran or a military coming home, I would be happy to be kind of their mentor.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely great idea, and it really can make a difference just to have somebody to call and help navigate all the rules and regulations
Well,
and
it got me thinking about veteran suicide and homelessness. Maybe that could be one way to kind of, minimize that a little bit if they knew they had somebody they could talk to.
well, you're you're talking to the right guy because I'm gonna bring it up right away with the various service secretaries and the Secretary of Defense. I mean, I think a buddy system is a great idea, and it would be fairly easy. And as you say, I'm sure many veterans would volunteer in a minute
I
to
know you
perform
would.
that function.
And I also think like myself, I retired as a EA. There's this big group of senior enlisted that we could band together and, men and women together to try to help our younger veterans and military coming back. I mean, I think we're key to that. But unless there's some concerted effort to make it happen, um, I don't know. I bet,
Well, yeah,
I'm on
and
board. If you
part
need
of
my,
the problem part of the problem seems to be people leave active duty and they've got this very structured life, and they know where they're going to be sleeping that night, and they know what they're supposed to be doing, and they've got people looking after them and telling them what to do quite often, and then all of a sudden they pop out of the end of this process, and they're in a place that they haven't been perhaps since they were 16, 17, 18 years old. Well,
right.
let's follow up on that, but I don't want to get lost. I don't want to miss the rest of your career. So you're through basic training
Hmm.
at Orlando. What happens next?
Yeah. What happened next was I went to the Explosive Ordnance Disposal School in Indian Head, Maryland. That's where I was signed. And that's where they train. It was all men and Navy SEALs as well, men from all branches of services and Navy SEALs, to do EOD work. And I was the only female there, enlisted or officer. And I was just out of boot camp. And that that tour of duty there almost broke me there. I almost said, I can't do this because it was very difficult being the only woman there in a man's world. And
I'm really surprised that they would put one and only one woman in a situation like that. I would have thought they would have assured there were at least two or three or four. I mean, it's pretty easy in hindsight, but holy
yeah,
smoke, one woman and how many men? A couple of hundred?
oh, at least, yeah, a couple of hundred. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very challenging, but especially the first probably 6 months or so was very challenging. And one of the senior officers approached me and kind of found out that something wasn't right here. And so I divulged to him about that, and the next day I was working for him directly, so that helped a lot alleviate all of that. But I didn't let it stop me from I wanted my career. I wanted to be in the Navy, and I wanted to serve my country, and I wasn't going to let anything, if I could help it, deter me from doing what I wanted to do. I mean, I had to stand duty on my own in a nuclear power building on base. I had to do the physical fitness like they all had to do. And I just kept charging forward and got through all of that. When I went into the Navy in 1974, I went in as an E1, a seaman. I didn't have any college education. I didn't have any background really in anything. So part of the next couple of years was me, they were trying to determine, well, where does she fit? So they sent me to the Pentagon for about 8 months to work on the computer systems to see if that's what I wanted. And then they sent me to Pax River to a dispersing center there for the Navy to see if that's what I wanted to do. And eventually I ended up going into the computer technology role. And when I finished my tour there, then I went to Pearl Harbor after that.
But
And
but just to be clear, being a seaman, a sailor on a ship wasn't an option. Is
no,
that correct?
not at all.
Yeah.
No,
So basically, you had a limited series of choices that involved what amounted to office work.
exactly. Yeah.
And now, did you have any background in computers? I suppose
I don't know.
nobody, no, nobody had much background in computers in
No,
those
and
days.
when I went to Pearl Harbor, back in the day, then we had the big round discs, that you dropped into the
Sure.
computer. There was no cell phones.
Floppy disks.
Right. Yeah. And but even though I didn't serve on board ships for tours of duty, I definitely had my share of experience going on some of the ships, and also got to go underway on one of our nuclear submarines when I was stationed at the submarine base at Pearl Harbor. Again, there I was the only woman there, and by that time I had made E7, and that's one thing that was great about the Navy. Even though I didn't have that, tours of duty on ships and stuff, I was still able to get promoted. I studied hard for it. We had to take tests and all of
Well,
that.
you mentioned guarding the nuclear facilities building when you were, how old were you then? About 20, 19, 20?
No, I was, yeah, probably 19 at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things about the military that isn't often discussed is that you were likely to have more responsibility at a younger age than anywhere else in our society.
Oh,
You,
absolutely.
you had some very responsible positions, and you weren't even out of your teens yet.
I know I had a loaded gun and ready to use it if I needed to. So,
Okay. I'm going to let that one pass.
like, I hope nobody comes here and tries to, break in. So
I don't think so. Not after that comment.
I grew up in a family where we hunt, we did hunting and all of that. So guns, I wasn't afraid of that. So,
Okay, so you're at Pearl Harbor,
yeah.
still doing computer work. How long were you stationed there?
Well, this is interesting because, again, not knowing what to do with me, I guess. I actually stayed in Pearl Harbor my whole tour after that, to fill out my 20 years. And I was at 6 different duty stations while I was there.
Well, that's really unusual. Usually they send you all over the world.
No, they did
And
not. I
and
tried to
and
go.
being stuck in Pearl Harbor doesn't sound like too bad a deal in terms of the environment.
Yeah, it wasn't bad duty, but it had its disadvantages as well. But I tried to go other places, but they kept saying, "We need you there. We need you here." So I just did what they told me to do.
Well, before we talk about your life after the service, give me a sort of a backward view of the experience. And you've already suggested some things that might have made it better. Well, let me ask this question. Do you think female people in the Navy today, it's a better situation?
Oh, absolutely. There's so much more opportunity and awareness, I think, of, women, obviously, that they can do the job as well. And so many more opportunities open to them on non-combatant, combatant ships. And, I wish I'd had some of that opportunity, but, I'm thankful that now that they can.
Now, one of the issues that we're wrestling with down here right now is cybersecurity. Was that something that you had to pay attention to in those days? Were there hackers when you were working on computer systems in Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of my main jobs for most of the time I was there was working with computer security and going out on the ships and submarines to make sure that they had security plans in place, and also that they had the right computer equipment there to do the job that they needed to do. So I was involved heavily in a lot of that work.
Did you code? Did you learn to code?
No, I did not. No, no.
But you basically were you'd go around to the ships to be sure they were secure. And of course, we're still doing that today. I just
Yeah.
had some questions today in the Armed Services Committee on that very subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about after you left. You were in the Navy for 20 years. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
So you left in the mid 90s, and what happened then? Did you come straight back to Maine, or uh,
No, I stayed. I actually, as soon as I retired, I stayed and worked for a year and for the Navy as in a contract position at the Pacific Fleet headquarters. There, I was basically doing the same job I was doing as active duty. So they kept me there for a year, and then after that, I came back to Maine. I got divorced while I was on active duty, and I had a young son, and we came back here.
now didn't you do college at some point during the time you were in
Oh,
the
yeah,
Navy?
yeah, I definitely did. I did 10 years of part-time college, and eventually got my bachelor's degree.
10 years. You should have gotten a diploma just for perseverance.
I know. Believe me, it wasn't easy.
And I presume the Navy paid.
They did, yes. Thankfully, they did, yes.
Yeah. So you came out, you come back to Maine. You said you were divorced. Did you have children?
Yeah, I had one son, and he was 12 at the time, I believe, when we came back. Yep.
Now, let's talk about, we talked a bit about the transition out, and you suggested it wasn't really all it ought to be, and I think unfortunately that's still the case. How was your transition, and what kind of interaction did you have with the VA?
I didn't have any interaction with the VA, and this is interesting. I retired in 1994, and it's only been probably 4 years ago that I started interacting with the VA here in Maine, um, because I did file a disability claim for some things that happened to me while I was in the military, and I've been very, very happy with their support and service here in Maine at the VA. I mean, I wish I'd done it sooner.
Well, that's what I hear. It used to be I heard a lot that accessing the facilities at the VA, getting into Togus was tough. But once you got there, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything negative about the treatment. And I'm glad to hear that's still the case,
Yeah, one of the things I hear a lot now is because I was at the DAV convention that you were at a weekend or so ago,
right?
and actually, I wanted to let you know that I was awarded during that convention, I was awarded the Disabled American Veteran of the Year for the state of Maine.
Wow, that's fabulous. Congratulations. I wish that had happened while I was there.
For all of the volunteer work and everything that I do. Um, but I'm sorry, could you ask the question again?
Well, I was going to ask how your transition out worked, and you say you didn't really weren't involved much with the VA. Was
No.
did you just step right back into a civilian life with your son in Belfast, or did you join DAV right away, or the Legion? Tell me about the time between you left and you got on your feet in Belfast.
Yeah, no, I came back. I just gotten divorced and everything, and my main focus was my son and trying to get back to find employment, and that was very challenging in the beginning because I went on several interviews, and people would say, "Well, they didn't understand. Well, here's this woman that was in the military. What can she do for us?" And it was very challenging. I would apply for jobs, I'd get turned down, and then MB&A Bank, now it was formerly MB&A, now Bank of America, hired me in 1997, I think it was.
Oh, that was in the heyday of MBNA.
Yes, and so I retired from Bank of America about 3 years ago after 23 years working there.
Were you at the Belfast facility, the new one?
Yes, I'd worked in Camden, Rockland, Belfast during all those transitions.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you walked into an employer today in Maine and said, "I'm a veteran and have computer skills," I don't think you'd have much trouble getting a job.
No, not at all. In fact, a lot of my time later at Bank of America, I was focused on hiring veterans for the company. So
Now, talk to me about your experience with veterans in Maine and the outreach that you've done. You said you just got the award from DAV.
mhm.
What's the work that you did that earned you that award?
Well, there's three or four organizations that I'm heavily involved in. One is Honor Flight Maine, which I know that you're very much aware of.
Oh, I was down there. Were you there last Sunday a couple of weeks
I
ago?
was, yes,
It,
yeah.
it's that's one of the most moving experiences to be there. And a guy, I got to share two stories. One guy came up to me and he almost had tears in his eyes, and he
Hmm.
said, "I'm a Vietnam vet, and when I came back, people spit on me,
Yeah,
and now I finally feel like I've been welcomed home."
yes.
And boy, I just thought that made it all worthwhile.
Oh, it
And
does.
and seeing those veterans come through that group of cheering people, I mean, it was really touching. And the other experience that I had that was pretty personal, I was taking a film, using my camera to take a film of the veterans coming by and everybody cheering. And this guy walked over and said, take that film back to Washington and show them what America's really like and tell them to quit fighting with each other.
All right.
I thought that was pretty cool.
I know.
So yeah, it's a great experience. And so you've been involved with Honor Flight?
Yes, since 2014, actually, what happened was, just to kind of give you a little background here, is after I came back out of the service, I was like, I got to be doing something that, like, I felt this calling to give back to my country still. That never leaves, I don't think, especially if you do 20 years. So I was trying to figure out, I was actually trying to figure out more about my father's service history because he passed away and never talked about it. And so one day I called the Military Women's Memorial in DC, and I got to speak to Brigadier General Wilma Vaught, and she asked me what state I was from, and I said Maine, and she said, "Well, have you ever heard of Honor Flight Maine?" And I said, "No." And she said, "I think they're going to start a hub there, so you might want to check that out." So I did, and I went as a guardian for a World War II veteran on my first trip because he didn't have any family to go with him. And that changed my life completely. That's what really started the engines going. And it's like, and that veteran's still living today. He lives in Bangor. He's 99, and we
Wow.
still stay connected. So after that, I said, I got to get more involved. So I submitted my letter of intent to be on the board of directors, and I've been on the board since then. And my primary focus is really to find veterans and talk to them about honor flight. But it's so much more than that for me. It has turned into a calling for me to find our most senior veterans and really let them know that they're not forgotten, and to honor them in any way that we can. And so that's a lot of what I do with Honor Flight. We're a nonprofit, so we do have to work hard at raising money, especially now with the cost of everything going up. But
Well,
you
now,
know,
aren't you also working with female veterans and have a, I think I saw something about a Facebook page. Tell me about that.
yeah, few years back, I was trying again. This was another calling. Like, I need to connect with other women veterans, and because I felt like I was the only one around, and so I created this group called Maine Women Veterans, and now I have over 1,400 women that are in this group, and some are on active duty, some are in the National Guard. You know, some a few of them live away still, but they were from Maine originally. And it's just been such a great group. It's a private group, and it's a safe space for women to talk about issues and find other support, that maybe they can't find elsewhere. I mean, we have had women that have wanted to commit suicide, they're homeless, they need help, direction, and um, we've been able to help through that group quite a bit.
Well, and I'm sure it was particularly helpful during the pandemic when when we couldn't go out and get around. I mean,
Absolutely.
it just, there are downsides to the technology, but there are also some upsides where people can be connected where otherwise, particularly in a state like Maine where people live in a lot of small communities, that this is really important. So, and this group, this Facebook group that you're doing is still going.
Oh, absolutely. It's growing all the time. It's growing all the time. What's the challenge is finding men or women veterans. That's the biggest challenge for Honor Flight, um, as well as we can't seem to get the information that we need. We're not going to get a list from the VA or from the Maine
Well,
Bureau of Veteran Services.
it, it's interesting you should say that because one of the suggestions I've had is that part of the separation process, soon to be veterans should be able to check a box that says it's okay to release my contact information to veteran service organizations and other, uh, legitimate nonprofits.
Mhm.
So they have a, once you check that box, then you can get that information. They don't have to join, but you can at least be in touch with them.
Right. I feel so helpless sometimes, to especially like our World War II right now. There's still many of them left living in Maine, but we can't find them because we can't get their information. And
Yeah,
it's too bad for them not to
but
have the opportunity to go on an honor flight.
but the irony is that they almost certainly want to be found.
They do. They do. They absolutely do.
Well, you've given me some good ideas, Joy, of things to follow up on.
Yes.
Before we close out, this recording will end up at the Library of Congress for History. Any thoughts you want to leave with us?
Well, the only other thing I wanted to tell you about that I'm involved in, I'm the Maine State Ambassador for our Military Women's Memorial in DC, and um, it's a volunteer position, appointed position, and my role is to help find our women veterans and make sure their stories are told. They're registered on our national memorial. And because it's the only national memorial we have for women that have ever served since the American Revolution to currently serving. And so, in fact, we're going to have our 25th anniversary this October in DC for the Women's Memorial.
Well, be sure and come by the office when you're down.
Absolutely. But that also is key to the work that I do, is the outreach to women veterans, so that they know that we want to know their stories. We want their legacy of service to carry on.
Well, Joy, this has been great, and the thing I'm hearing and I heard from you is a call to service.
Yes.
And you were called to service as a teenager. You stayed with it for 20 years under some pretty difficult circumstances, but your service didn't end after those 20 years. And those of us in Maine really appreciate that. So thank you so much for taking the time, but mostly thank you for the commitment you've made to our country, to our veterans, and to your community, and to Maine. Great to meet you again, and look forward to seeing you.
You as well, Senator. Thank you. And if I can ever be of service to help you with any of your programs, please don't hesitate to let me know.
You better watch out. I'll be in touch. Thanks
Thanks.
very much.
Yeah, take care.
Bye-bye.